Why do you always feel like something's missing, like you're missing? No matter how much you try, it never feels like enough. You chase goals, fix flaws, read books, listen to advice, but deep down, there's still that quiet voice whispering, you're not quite there yet. It's exhausting. You look around and wonder if everyone else has figured it out. You wonder why you still feel broken, lost, or behind. But what if that feeling isn't a sign that something's wrong with you? What if it's a trick, one you've been taught to believe your whole life? Alan Watts, the philosopher, who shook the foundations of how we see ourselves, offered a radical truth. You're not broken. You never were. The idea that you need fixing, that's the lie. In this video, you'll discover why you already are enough, just as you are. No upgrades, no self-repair, just a shift in how you see yourself, and it changes everything. Stay with this, not just with your mind, but with your heart, because once this clicks, the constant pressure to be better starts to fall away, and in its place, you'll feel something far more powerful, peace. There's a reason no matter how much work is done on the self, the feeling of lack still lingers. It's because the one trying to fix itself is just a concept, a story held together by thoughts, memories, and social conditioning. Alan Watts pointed directly at this illusion. He spoke of the ego, the constructed identity that says, I am this, or I should be that. It clings to labels, past mistakes, future hopes. But this identity is not solid. It changes moment to moment. 1 minute it feels confident, the next it feels broken. Which one is real? Watts described the self as a kind of hallucination, something believed in so deeply that it feels like truth. But when looked at closely, it begins to dissolve. Thoughts come and go. Emotions rise and pass. Even the voice in the head narrating everything isn't permanent. So who is this self that needs fixing? Where does it live? When silence is allowed, that false center starts to fade. What's left isn't broken. It's simply being alive, aware, without story. This insight echoes a deep teaching from Buddhism, the idea of anatta, or no self. It doesn't mean there's nothing here. It means there's no fixed, unchanging me behind the eyes. The self is not a solid object. It's more like a dance of conditions, family, culture, memories, biology, all swirling together to create a sense of me. But the moment any part of that changes, so does the self. That's why holding on to a fixed identity creates suffering. Trying to fix that identity only strengthens the illusion that it's real. Watts reminded us that trying to improve the ego is like polishing a ghost. It never becomes more real. It just becomes more demanding. The harder it's worked on, the more flaws it finds, the more effort poured in, the more broken it feels. That cycle is endless because it's built on a false foundation. So the real shift isn't becoming better. It's waking up from the belief that there's someone who needs fixing in the first place. That doesn't mean giving up. It means stepping out of the mental cage, noticing that behind all the noise, there's already wholeness. That still, quiet presence watching everything, never judged, never lacking, never broken, just aware, just being. That's who's always been here. Fixing becomes a habit so easily. At first it seems innocent, just a desire to grow, to improve, to be better. But it doesn't stop there. After one layer is adjusted, another appears. Fix the body, then the mind. Fix the thoughts, then the emotions. Fix the emotions, then the energy. It never ends. Even self-help becomes another layer of performance. I'm trying to fix my need to fix myself, someone might say, not realizing the loop has simply deepened. Alan Watts called this a trap of infinite regression. Like two mirrors facing each other, the reflection goes on forever, but never leads anywhere. One version of the self is constantly trying to clean up another version, always adjusting, always managing, but the fixer is just another mask, another version of the ego pretending to be in control. That creates tension, exhaustion, and a quiet sense of failure. This cycle steals peace. It keeps the mind focused on what's wrong or missing. Even in moments of calm, the question sneaks in. What should I be working on next? The stillness becomes uncomfortable. Silence feels like laziness. There's a constant hum of guilt for not doing more, not improving fast enough. This isn't growth, it's self-rejection, dressed as progress. Watts pointed out how deeply society feeds this mindset. From a young age, People are trained to believe their projects, grades, goals, careers, relationships. Everything becomes a measurement, something to improve, something to optimize. Even spirituality gets turned into a ladder. More awareness, more presence, more healing. But in chasing more, the present is lost. Life becomes a waiting room for some future version of peace. There's no finish line in this loop. No final moment where the self says, now I'm perfect, because the self doing the judging is the same one creating the standards. It moves the goalpost every time it gets close. That's how the trap stays in place. What seems like growth becomes just another disguise for the fear of being enough as is. Watts offered something rare, a way out of the loop, not by fixing it, but by seeing through it, noticing the urge to improve, but not obeying it automatically, sitting quietly with the discomfort of being, without trying to change it. And in that space, something unexpected begins to unfold, a gentler rhythm, a softer breath, a life not managed, but lived. Growth often wears the mask of struggle. Push harder, do more, be better. That's the rhythm so many live by. But Alan Watts turned that belief on its head. He said the real transformation doesn't begin with effort. It begins with surrender. Acceptance isn't giving up. It's dropping the fight against what is. It's saying, this is what I feel. This is where I am. And something shifts when that's allowed. The storm inside starts to settle. Not because it's been fixed, but because it's no longer being resisted. Most pressure comes from comparison, against others, against an ideal version of the self, against the past or the future. Even healing becomes a competition. There's guilt for not being peaceful enough, shame for not being happy enough, frustration for still carrying pain. But Watts offered a radical idea. None of that is necessary. That quiet war inside, the one that says I'm not there yet, only exists because it's being believed. The moment it's not resisted, it loses power. Acceptance is often mistaken for stagnation, as if being at peace with what is means nothing will ever change. But Watts explained that acceptance isn't the end of growth. It's where real growth begins. Change that comes from resistance is shaky. It's built on rejection, on fear. But change that flows from acceptance is rooted. It doesn't come from panic, but from clarity, from stillness, from love. Pressure melts in presence. The moment is enough, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. That includes the messy parts, the sadness, the doubts, the restlessness. None of it needs to be pushed away. And in that space of allowing, the self softens. The mind becomes less loud. The body breathes easier. It's not about stopping movement or giving up intention. It's about shifting the source of that movement from fear to peace, from lack to wholeness. Watts spoke often about letting go, not as a mental technique, but as a natural response to seeing the futility of clinging. When control is dropped, life flows, not because everything becomes easy, but because resistance no longer blocks the flow. There's more energy, more creativity, more joy, not because anything was added, but because the noise was released. This kind of acceptance doesn't need permission. It doesn't need progress to justify itself. It's a quiet, powerful yes to the now. And in that yes, life starts to unfold differently. Not as a problem to solve, but as an experience to feel. Ego sits in the mind like a relentless narrator. It weaves stories every second. It takes raw sensations and labels them mine. Good, bad, success, failure. One breath feels calm, and the ego claims victory. The next breath feels tight, and it declares defeat. Thoughts become script lines. The narrator grades each one, pass or fail, high or low, safe or unsafe. It never pauses. Comparison fuels these tales. A glimpse of someone else's highlight, and a new chapter forms. I should be more like that. A memory of past mistakes sparks another. I'm still not enough. Even peaceful moments get measured. Am I calm enough yet? The storyteller sets impossible standards, then scolds when they're missed. It builds an identity out of constant judgment, always shifting, never satisfied. Alan Watts exposed this pattern. He said the ego is a social institution, not a... It's an echo of voices, parents, teachers, media, all condensed into a single commentator. This commentator pretends to be the real self, but it's just noise. When silence arrives, the narrator loses material, so it creates drama to stay alive. The story of inadequacy rests on selective memory. The mind replays every flaw, every awkward moment. Winds fade fast, missteps linger. That bias keeps the self small, yet the bias itself can be seen. Who is watching the story unfold? That watcher isn't judging, it simply notices. In that noticing, the narrative loosens its grip. Challenging the ego isn't a fight. Arguing with the narrator only feeds it. The shift happens by spotting the pattern and letting it pass. A thought says, "You failed." A breath meets it. Space opens. The sentence floats away. Another thought compares bank accounts or bodies. Another breath. More space. Each time the narrator speaks without resistance, its authority weakens. It becomes background rather than boss. Watts often joked that trying to fix the ego is like polishing a ball of mud. Scrubbing only smears it around. Step back instead. See that mud as mud. The texture may feel unpleasant, yet it poses no real threat. It is just contempt passing through awareness. When that truth sinks in, the storyteller's volume drops. Silence gains depth. Presence expands. In that wider space, new stories can arise. Stories of kindness, of resilience, of simple being. They don't need constant judgment to feel alive. They don't rely on comparison to have worth. They emerge naturally, like waves forming on a vast sea, full, complete, and already enough. Alan Watts often said the most astonishing thing of all is that people think they're separate from everything else. A single wave might think it's just a wave rising, falling, crashing, disappearing. But the wave isn't something apart from the ocean. It is the ocean, moving in a particular way. In the same way, a human being is not something outside of nature, not a lonely figure dropped into a world, not an outsider looking in. Each person is the universe, expressing itself in a temporary form. This isn't poetry, it's reality. The carbon in the bones, the iron in the blood, the oxygen in every breath. None of it came from outside the universe. Stars had to burn, explode, and scatter for this body to exist. Mountains eroded into soil so food could grow. Rain fell, light traveled, generations passed. Also this single moment could unfold, exactly as it is. There is no part of this life that isn't deeply connected to everything else. Watts pointed out that the illusion of separateness is created by thought. Words cut up the world into pieces, self and other, here and there, now and then. But nature doesn't work that way. A tree doesn't think of itself as separate from the earth. It doesn't question its place. It simply grows. Human beings, though, use language to split things apart, and then suffer from the belief that they are alone. That belief leads to fear. The fear of not being enough. The fear of being left out behind, or broken. But when that false boundary falls away, something else appears. Wholeness. Not as a concept, but as a direct experience. A softening, a merging, a sense that life is not happening to anyone, but as everyone. Each person is a window through which the universe sees itself. This idea can feel distant at first, like something meant for monks or mystics. But Watts made it simple. He said the universe peeks out through every set of eyes. The same source that shines in the stars is present in the spark of awareness behind the eyes. That awareness is not personal. It doesn't belong to anyone. It's life, awake, and observing. Nothing needs to be done to earn that connection. It's already here. It always has been. There is no test to pass, no perfection to reach. Just this moment, just this breath. And in that simplicity, the whole universe is alive. Through one small life, it experiences laughter, sorrow, silence, joy, confusion, beauty, and all of it matters, because all of it is one. Alan Watts called it the marvelous moment, the space where life actually happens. Not in plans, not in regrets, not in dreams, just here, just now. This single moment, fully lived, holds more truth than 1,000 thoughts about what could be. Yet this is the one place most people avoid. The mind runs to the future, measuring how far there is to go, or it circles the past, replaying scenes that can't be changed. All the while, the present slips by unnoticed, like background noise in a busy room. There's a deep tension, created by always trying to fix something. Life becomes a project, a problem, a task to complete. Every emotion is analyzed, every behavior questioned, every experience filtered through the lens of, is this good enough? That constant effort drains the joy out of being. It turns ordinary moments into stepping stones, never destinations. But life isn't a ladder. It's not a checklist. There is nowhere to arrive. Watts compared life to music, not a race to the final note, but a dance meant to be enjoyed along the way. No one listens to a song just to hear the last chord. The beauty is in the melody, the rhythm, the pause. Each moment adds to the richness of the whole. Living is the same. When rushing to the end, the entire point is missed. The subtle joy of drinking tea, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of wind, all of it becomes invisible when the mind is chasing the next thing. Presence isn't about control. It's not about freezing the moment or holding on tightly. It's about relaxing into it, allowing it to be exactly what it is. Sadness, joy, confusion, peace. They all have a place in the song. None need to be edited out. When that shift happens, everything becomes sacred. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Breathing, walking, sitting quietly, these simple acts return to their full depth. The mind will still wander. That's its nature. But the invitation remains. Come back. Come back not to fix or improve, but to feel, to be. Each return is like finding the beat again in a piece of music. The rhythm continues. The dance goes on. Watts wasn't offering an escape from reality. He was pointing to it. Not the idea of life, but the raw, direct experience of it. Not tomorrow, not after healing, not when everything is finally figured out. Now, in this very moment, everything that's needed is already here. The music is already playing, and the only thing missing is attention. Alan Watts often laughed at how seriously people take life. The need to control every detail, to calculate every outcome, to force meaning out of every experience. It creates pressure where there could be play. Life, he said, is not a journey with a finish line. It's more like a dance or a piece of music. It's not about getting somewhere. It's about enjoying how it unfolds. That shift from control to flow changes everything. It lightens the load. It opens the heart. Perfection is a heavy goal. It creates tightness in the body and doubt in the mind. When everything has to go a certain way, even small changes feel like failure. That tight grip turns living into a performance. The joy disappears, but playfulness brings breath back into the moment. Play doesn't demand success. It invites curiosity. It says, what if this didn't have to be so serious? It welcomes mistakes as part of the process. It doesn't need a purpose to be meaningful. Watts encouraged a different kind of wisdom. Not the kind that tries to master life, but the kind that moves with it, like a surfer riding a wave, not building one, like a bird gliding with the wind, not fighting against it. Control is based on fear. Flow is based on trust, not blind trust, but a quiet confidence that life knows how to carry itself. There's room to breathe when the grip is released. There's space to laugh when things go wrong. Even challenges feel lighter when they're not judged so harshly. Dancing with life means letting the rhythm guide the steps. Some days move quickly, others slowly. Some feel awkward, others feel smooth. But each moment has its own music. The mind might try to speed things up or take the lead, but the deeper invitation is to listen, to let the dance happen through the body, not from the head. There's strength in softness, power in surrender. When life becomes less of a battle and more of a game, it becomes easier to show up fully, to try things, to fall, to get back up, to smile through the uncertainty. Watts didn't promise control. He pointed to something better, freedom. And that freedom lives in those who can laugh, move, breathe, and play, even when nothing is figured out. Alan Watts reminded us that life isn't something to conquer. It's something to experience. You don't need to fix yourself to be worthy. You don't need to reach some final version of who you think you should be. Right now, in all your mess, your doubts, your softness, your strength, you are already enough. The pressure to become can fall away, and what's left is something far more real: presence, peace, and the quiet freedom of just being. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, if it gave you even a small sense of relief or clarity, take a moment to support this space. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and join us as we explore more wisdom that brings you back to who you truly are.